My paper for the presidential panel has a title, Russia, an Axe to Grind. It is very late, too late for many who will not see another day. Thrown into the meat grinder of the war against Ukraine, into that ideological void opened a long time ago by Russian nihilism, a symptom of an identity crisis Russia has been trying to fill from the very inception of its entry to modernity in the early 18th century. As soon as Russia encountered the West, it opened an identitarian wound, forever oscillating between its own lagging behind Europe and attempts to compensate for that delay by messianic nationalist acceleration, be it in its religious or communist guise. That split was eminently marked in an emblematic, metaphorical way by Raskolnikov's axe, splitting the culture in half, but was recently given a modern-day literal instantiation by another denizen of St. Petersburg, Yevgeny Prigozhin, and his Kuvalda, with which he smashed the brains of his political opponents and Ukrainian war prisoners. All available on YouTube. This process has now entered its terminal stage, literally and figuratively, under the name of Russism, Russian fascism. In the name of Russia, 1,500 bodies are now thrown into the maw of that sovereignist compensation daily. This process is, and that is only on the Russian side, not counting the numerous Ukrainian civilians, which bothers me much more, intentionally killed in schools, hospitals, their place of work, thousands of children deported from Ukraine to Russia, in itself a genocide by the Geneva Convention and international laws. In the name of Russia, Russian idea, language, literature, and culture, in the name of all of these bodies of tradition and knowledge, which constitute our own discipline, Russians are bombing Kiev. I will take the liberty to quote from my essay, After Russian Post-Colonial Identity, published in Modern Language Notes a quarter of a century ago, in order to give a brief genealogy of the ideological premises which energize this aggressivity. Vladimir Solovyov, in his Russian Idea, published in 1888, concludes that, I quote Solovyov, the Russian Empire, which would want to serve the universal church and the deed of social organization, will bring to the family of peoples of the world peace and blessing by taking them under its protection. End of quote from Solovyov. And I continued. Solovyov, of course, does not ask whether peoples of the world would want to be submitted to Russia's blessing or the peaceful protection of the Russian Empire. His is the colonial gesture which unfolds within Russian history as the colonization of others. And now conclude the quote from my essay. One aspect of Slavic studies which stems from out of this historical predicament is that most Slavic departments in the US are configured as, in fact, Russian departments, mini empires. Other Slavic programs and disciplines are taken under its protection, often given only perfunctory representation and only introductory language instruction, as opposed to a full-fledged Russian syllabus in literary theory, culture, or arts at all undergraduate and graduate levels. The war of Russian aggression on another Slavic country gives additional impetus to think the links they entertain in American academia. This premise requires reconfiguration of departments from within to affect the politics of staffing, hiring, and the cultivation of the Slavic disciplines other than Russian to the point where we might equally imagine a department in which 1 of 8 professors would teach Russian, and 7 others, South Slavic modernism, the Muslim cultures in the Balkans and the Caucasus, including also Roma, diasporic culture, Bulgarian Slavic literacy, Polish literature, Ukrainian Jews, Prague and Kafka, and especially all those cultures in their historic interconnection and dialogue, and in the ways many of them were kept under colonial domination and cultural occupation by the Russian and Soviet empires. And the second aspect that confronts specifically and singularly Russian scholars, of which I am one. From now on, they will have to ask themselves and to justify their teaching and research by starting with the question posed by Adorno many decades ago. Is it possible to write poetry after the Holocaust? To paraphrase him slightly, how to teach and read and write about Russian literature after the genocide perpetuated in the war against Ukraine? For the radical acceleration and the violent void form of Russian nationalism in the guise of Russism brought to the fore the fact that Russia is a country which needs to work through its xenophobia but also anti-Semitism, from the protocols of the wise men of Zion to recent anti-Semitic public statements by Lavrov and Putin. The current war of aggression of Russia treats Ukraine in similar ways to the ways the Tsarist regime treated Jews. Resolving the Jewish problem required, in the words of Konstantin Pobedonostsev, to convert 1/3 of them, expelled another third, and killed the rest. This is now applied by Russism to the entire Ukraine. Thus emerges a strange Judaification of Ukraine, noted also by Jason Stanley, for example, facing nothing less than the final solution of its existence. If something gives me a glimmer of hope in the current dark hours, it is the great heroic example of Ukrainians from which I learn in awe every day. As a literary scholar, I take solace in the poetic beauty of the words Bavovna and Palyanitsa, or from the line about Ruski военный корабль, as sublime as any lyrical poem by Pushkin, an instant classic. And another reason which gives me hope and has motivated my participation today, it is the fact that under Vitaly Chernetsky, the forces of liberation have been articulated and motivated in ASEEES. His stellar scholarship on Ukrainian postmodernism, of course preceding this engagement as the president and giving a solid disciplinary foundation and reflection. I am profoundly grateful to him for inviting me and bringing me again into the ASEEES fold. Also, my hope arises from the fact that in our Slavic discipline, I discern amazing achievements and energies made visible already today in my younger colleagues. I urge you to read the work of Lisa Wakamia on Ukrainian and Jewish visual culture, Leah Feldman on Azeri culture and literature, and the Global South, a groundbreaking endeavor. Amelia Glazer and her transformation of the field of Yiddish, Jewish, Ukrainian, and Russian disciplines. Marietta Borzhevich's extraordinary work on the hydropoetics of the Danube, the session with her right now on that topic at the ASEEES this very moment. Their work, to name just a brilliant few, gives me hope that Slavic studies will find a way to receive this knowledge in its full transformative force. Now, whether there will be an American university left standing and in what form to nurture this transformation is a question and a problem for another day for all of us and for future liberation or liberations. But for now, Sve bude Ukrajina, Harna, Vilna i nezaležna. Thank you.